In university, they teach you how to be a good optometrist, but they don't teach you how to open your own practice. And being two young graduate optometrists with no one to ask about how to open a practice in terms of the nitty-gritty, the admin side, that was a little bit of a challenge for us. So that's why we thought, let's put that aside. Let's do what we can first. Let's be better. And that's what we did. We knew we want to open together, but we also want to make sure we're ready when the time does come.
Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. In each episode, we bring together leaders from optometry, optical dispensing, and business to share insights, practical strategies, and the latest developments shaping independent practice today. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore how innovation, collaboration, and smart business thinking can drive growth, enhance patient care, and strengthen the future of independent optometry. Whether you're a student, an early career professional, or an established practice owner, The Focused View is your go-to source for knowledge, inspiration, and connection. The Focused View is brought to you by Vision Connection, supporting independent eye care professionals across Australia through collaboration, education, and business growth. By working closely with leading suppliers and industry partners, Vision Connection offers unique opportunities that help independents stand out and succeed. To find out more, visit their website, visionconnection.com.au.
So obviously, establishing the importance of partnerships, and you found your partner, and you've gone through, and your business partner, and you've been able to discuss items and know that that's the person, and obviously that's a continuing thing, as we've mentioned. Once the partnership was in place, how did you actually go about starting the business? So can you walk us through what that looked like?
So once we decided to open the practice, we had the idea in mind, but we agreed, okay, let's put that aside, learn as much as we can being eye care practitioners, learn what works for us, what doesn't work for us, and we will revisit this when we're ready. So in university, they teach you how to be a good optometrist, but they don't teach you how to open your own practice. And being two young graduate optometrists with no one to ask about how to open a practice in terms of the nitty-gritty, the admin side, that was a little bit of a challenge for us. So that's why we thought, let's put that aside. Let's do what we can first. Let's be better. And that's what we did. We knew we want to open together, but we also want to make sure we're ready when the time does come. Now, lucky for us, Mandy worked in an independent practice after graduating. So she knows Provision, and that's when Kelvin came into the story. So he became our business coach to opening the practice. And at the beginning, Provision acted as motivation. So when we're more so working in independent practice, we'll meet with him and he's like, oh, guys, remember you want to open an independent practice. How's that going? And I'm like, so we'll tell him our progress. And we said, look, we know there's this whole suite of things that you need to do to open, but we're figuring out when is a good time to start it. And for him, he told us, you can start yesterday. But at the same time, I also have mentors. I have a really good support system through Young Optometrists. And they said, look, you want to get as much experience as you can. You want to learn as much as you can, so you're ready. So we kept both of those thoughts in mind. And Kelvin told us, look, yes, I agree. You need to talk to all of these people outside of optometry. You probably need an accountant. You probably need a conveyancer. You need to be looking at where you want to open. So all of this was brainstormed at the back of our mind. And it gave us a good starting point. So it acted as motivation as well as for Provision. For us, we thought, okay, we'll start scrolling online. We look for a good location that we like. At the same time, we'll start keeping an eye out for people in the industry that we might want as an accountant, as our conveyancer, so forth. Because as an optometrist in optometry school, other optometrists, you don't really have connections to other people outside of industry. And that was what kickstarted it. So knowing what we want, talking to people, having a good support network.
And is that something that you were able to find yourself, or did you use the likes of Provision or other, other existing business owners? How did you go about stumbling upon, I refer to them as an A team, like your A team are the people that you go to get things done. So in this instance, you'd mentioned accountant, conveyancer or solicitor, that they're probably the two to get things going. You found your business partner. How did you go about finding them, and what was that journey like?
It's a blur at the moment, but one thing did start the process, and it was very clear to us. We knew that if you want to open, you need a business name. So for once we thought, we're working as clinicians, we have time. Let's, figure out different business names that we might find that we like. Let's brainstorm some names, put in our Facebook chat every day. And we came up with our definition of optometrist. After we got our name, we thought, okay, well, we need a logo for, our practice. So I thought, okay, I'm good with arts and crafts. So what I did was I went on Microsoft PowerPoint, put some circles, put some rectangles, put some lines together, and that's how we got our logo. And the next step was, okay, we know that in order to have a business, you need an ACN, because we were both locums at the stage as well. We were working as optometrists, part-time / full-time, as well as locuming on the side. We were pretty much working 6 or 7 days a week to make sure we have the cash flow to open the business. We're like, okay, so as a locum, we have an ABN. As a business, we need an ACN. So we need an accountant. And at the stage, we talked to various people, didn't find someone that fitted our circumstances nicely. And it was one day where I was hanging out with my cousin, and she was telling me, oh, what plans do you have? And I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of opening a practice with my friend. And she thought, okay, how's that going? I'm like, oh, we're looking for an accountant. And she went, oh, I have a friend. He just started his own accounting company on the side. And I'm like, oh, maybe connect us. And Mandy and I went, okay, we'll just have the meeting. We'll see how we go. We'll decide whether we want this accountant or not. And during the meeting, we clicked very well. And he outlined what we needed as a business, what's the best solution for us. And he said, okay, so do you guys want to apply for the ACN? And we thought, yeah, we'll apply for the ACN and then for the business name and AC. And that started the ball rolling, because we thought, okay, well, now we've actually put money into this. So you gotta start doing everything else now, or else, it's just gonna go to waste. And that was late 2022, second half of 2022. So that's how we started. And with that, we went, okay, we have our business name, we have registered for an ACN. What's next? We need to find a location. So we went to areas, we looked at Campsie, we looked at Leppington, we looked at other areas, other suburbs in Sydney. We were recommended Dulwich Hill by Provision. We're looking at, we're like, oh, look, a lot of these places, they already have optometry practices. And at the time, I remember once going to Walleye Creek, and they had a really good croissant store, and they do matcha croissants. So I went to Mandy and I said, oh, you know what? There's this suburb called Walleye Creek, not far from Dulwich Hill. Let's have a look at it. So at the time, we went to Walleye Creek, and we're like, oh, this is very nice. I think we're gonna go for Walleye Creek. And at the time, there were no optometry practices in Walleye Creek yet, and we thought, this is. But of course, opening a practice takes time. And during our time of, looking for a place to rent for the practice, a practice opened. And we thought, okay, no, now practice open, we can't open here. So we looked around, we tried to find another suburb that might be a good fit, but ultimately we went back to Walleye Creek, and we thought, you know what? There is enough patients for everyone. You can coexist. You can have synergies. You can grow together. Different practices, they have the same goal. They just want the best for the patients. So we thought, we're going to settle, and we're going to open in Walleye Creek anyway.
Yeah, no, because I want to break down a little bit of this, because you've mentioned, so the business name is generally the first thing people will consider. I mean, once they've decided they want to start a business, the logo as well as, so they're things that you can create and not invest any money in, and you can have a business name, and you can obviously create the logo. I mean, you've done it yourself, which is good. Then you spoke about business structure. And I guess at that point, you mentioned that the accountant that you were, you've been able to find by asking through your network, through family and friends, connect with someone. Now, they were able to give you some really solid advice, I imagine, with regards to, the business structure, the taxation advice, all that sort of stuff. Maybe not necessarily legal advice, but the structures will obviously have some type of legal implication. All of that was discussed quite well with that person. Do you feel, or did you speak to other people at that particular point in time?
So at that stage in time, I knew that when you're opening a practice or a business, you want to have an ACN, but at the same time, you can go and have a partnership.
Yeah.
You can be shareholders and then also decide whether you have your 50% shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you can decide whether you want to go for a trust or not. So they actually went through every single option with us. And then they went, look, based on what you're telling me, I think this is the best one for you.
Sure.
Might be different for someone else, but for both of you guys, I think, opening it like structure ABC would be the best.
And I think it's important to notice that this is obviously in setting up a Greenfield. So you're setting up a practice from scratch here, as opposed to buying an existing business or, where a lot of things have probably been set up. And again, highlighting that's really critical. So, and these are the lesser known, but really critical steps, of forming and creating a business. When you came to picking Wallow Creek, because that was the next part of the equation for you, did you look at demographics? Did you look at anything sort of with the ABS and that, or was it more of just a going there and vibing it and feeling it out kind of thing?
So when we were looking for suburbs, we were basically looking for a place that works for us. So what that meant was you would go there, you will observe the demographics, the traffic of people that flow through, and ease of commute to the area, what is already in the area in terms of allied health, what other facilities are there that may attract people to the area as well. So those are all the things we considered. Now, what we learned later down the track is once you've decided it's a suburb you want to open in, you want a bank loan, because when you open, you need a loan unless you have the financials to back yourself up without borrowing money. And in order for the bank to loan you money, you need a business plan. So you need to know what your short-term and what your long-term goals are for the practice and what you forecast for the business. And I think this is pretty good because this is a way for the bank to filter out people who are actually passionate about opening. Because if someone's not passionate and they just go, I want to open, and they don't need to do all of these little hurdles, you don't know how dedicated they will be in opening a practice. So in terms of coming up with a business plan, what was part of it was coming up with a report about the suburb that we're interested in too. So that answers the question where, yes, we had to go through the nitty gritty, looking at the demographics, looking at the population, looking at whether they're single things, so single income, no kids, double income, no kids, or whether they have a family, who actually lives in the area, and what potential that would unlock for us if we were to open that.
And can you speak about the business plan itself? So you've identified that you needed funding. Funding wasn't coming necessarily from, monies that were already had. So you had to go to the bank and receive funds. What was the business plan like? How did you create it? Did you do it yourselves? Did you get advice from individuals or people? Like what did that actually look like? And then what did the approach to the bank look like?
So the business plan aspect of this was more so if you were to search online, there will be some business plan templates that you can get, and it will give you a rough guide. Honestly, nowadays you can probably go and ChatGPT and ask, bank, I need a business plan.
Sure.
Something will probably pop up to give you a template.
And it would be good as well, I bet you.
But back then, that wasn't too popular for us. So we thought, okay, well, we need a business plan. We had the email outlining what you would need in a business plan. What was helpful was at the time Provision, they say, oh, look, for people who open their business, we do have a template. You can use this template, pre-fill it, put in your information, put in your goals, put in your outlines, go back to me, we'll see if it's realistic, submit it to the bank. So that was actually very helpful for us. And when we submitted it to the bank, they were quite good because the banks that you go for, they're the ones that are more lenient to lend to health practices or practices.
So you're talking to your Medfins and your BOQSs and the ones that
so we went with BOQS. And it was quite safe because for them, they went, look, health industry, optometry industry, it is a safe option relative to everything else. And in the business plan, we basically outlined what we predicted we will need in order to open the practice as one of the subsection. And they will evaluate it and think, okay, well, this is how much is in your savings. This is how much you guys want to put in the business. I agree or I don't agree with this. This is how much the bank is willing to offer to
Yeah.
help you open the practice.
Yeah, well, no. Again, that's a really sort of tricky point, and I feel like a lot of people will get unstuck at that point because you can create the name, you can have the idea, you can set up the business. These are all things that you can do as long as you've got some funds. But the business plan is where you sort of take the next step. And you, in this instance, I believe Provision have been able to assist you in that. They know the industry very well. They understand optometrists very well and the challenges that they face. So I mean, leaning in support with support structures like that, I guess, quite powerful. And then the bank also then validates your idea, because the bank's not they're in the business of making money. So they're not going to hand out money if they don't think they're going to get it back with interest. And so it's a bit of a vetting process for yourself too, to make sure that what you're working on is going to actually, come to fruition, in some capacity. So and again, if you're happy to speak about it, because I feel like this is one of those really important points that a lot of people probably will either gloss over or not think about when they're starting a business. When it went to approaching the bank, what was the context with regards to the amount you wanted? And you don't have to disclose it bigger, you can make something up. But how did that work as a percentage of the funds that you need? How much did you need to contribute yourself? How much did they expect you to have? What did all of that look like from an actual, I guess, application to the bank and the things that they're after? And again, this is more in line for somebody that's thinking of starting their own practice and having to go through the motions. What's possible for them?
So in terms of approaching the bank for loan itself, we first had to have a look at what our personal assets are prior to the bank agreeing to loan us, because we're opening a new business. The business doesn't have any credibility. It hasn't been open yet. You don't know if it's going to go well or not. So the only thing the bank can bet on is your idea and how much you already have in terms of your assets. We've already agreed with the bank in our business plan, this is how much we're going to both contribute to it, and this is how much we will need. So in terms of how much we will need, that's derived from speaking to suppliers in advance. And this is where having a business is so good, because Mandy will go speak to the lens company, I will speak to the instrument or the equipment company, so forth, and vice versa. And then we'll come up, we'll have our quote, we'll insert it all in our business plan, and we have a rough idea of how much it will actually cost to open a practice itself. The bank was actually quite happy with the amount that we were looking to borrow, and we were actually able to get what we asked for. And they even said, look, if plans change, please let us know. We can revise the pre-approval for this loan.
Okay, so you actually sort of pre-approval as part of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I feel like it really speaks to the power of the business plan, because it's made you do practical things that you're going to need after the event, which is that vetting sort of experience. And so again, speaking to suppliers and understanding what the cost of, goods are going to be, what the cost of, what the assets that you need to acquire, all that sort of stuff, is really, really, I guess it sounds easy to say, but I can imagine at the time it would have been really, really mind boggling, and like going, whoa, what are these things that we're talking about here? And what's all this about? But now in hindsight, looking back now at the business plan, how you mapped it out with regards to what it looks like today, did it come to fruition as you mapped it out in the business plan, or what would be that, I guess, the deviation from that, if any?
I guess in the context of how well we're performing in comparison to our original business plan, we have surpassed what our projection is at this point in time. So we're doing better than what we would have predicted at the 2.5-year mark of opening.
Yeah.
And that's because we both put our all in the business. We always try to innovate, come up with solutions when something doesn't work. When someone has an idea, we've implemented it, it doesn't go to plan. The next person goes, oh, well, I have an idea. So you're constantly running, you're constantly trying to build the practice and making it better. You're not pausing, you're not stopping.
It speaks back to the benefit of being in the partnership too, where you can bounce ideas off one another and you can improve the business. But I think fundamentally, I think a lot of that success is anchored on the fact that you had a plan to begin with. And this is where the bank loan actually might have helped you. Again, some people that don't need a bank loan, it may actually sometimes, not necessarily the most positive thing, because the exercise of the bank loan allowed you to go through things and start to plan and strategize for the business specifically, which you probably otherwise wouldn't have done, or maybe not done to that level. So I think there's a really powerful point in that. And I guess I really want to spend a bit of time on that. So you've set up the business, registered the company, got the logo happening, got your business plan, spoken to suppliers, sort of mapping it all out, got in the bank's giving you the pre-approval. I'm imagining next we've picked the location, we're starting to look for an actual property. We're starting to look for a location for the store. Can you talk about that, and what are some of the finer detail of that experience that you learned, I guess, that you can pass on to our listeners?
Yeah. So I think when we're listing it all out now, it sounds very sequential, but we have to know that it also happens at the same time. So
For sure.
it overlaps a lot. So from the very beginning, we would have already started browsing for locations that might be a good
Yeah.
potential for beginning the
Yeah,
practice.
absolutely.
I mentioned how we explored Southwest Sydney, we explored North Sydney, we explored like South Side, and then that's when we decided Walleye Creek is best. Once we agreed that Walleye Creek was the suburb we wanted to open, we needed something to be available to rent out. And we were actually looking for 8 months before we found an area that we would potentially want to open in. And that spot wasn't really, it was actually available for the whole 8 months, but we just never
Right.
thought that it might be a good location to open, just because for optometry practices where we want 2 consultation rooms, 1 imaging room, we were advised, 100 square meters.
Okay. I was going to say,
Easiest.
that's a really key thing, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, how did you determine, or what made you, what were your parameters, what were your requirements, and how did you come up with what you needed? Like, obviously, 2 optoms, so you're going to want a consultant room each. That's, I guess, understandable. Everything else, how was that? How did you get advice on that? And who did you lean on for support with understanding what you needed to do? Was it suppliers? Was it Provision?
I believe at the time it would have been Provision, where they said, look, if you want 2 consultation room, if you want an imaging room, you probably want to work on 100, 120. And for us, we thought, okay, that sounds like a good, starting point. So we went to Mascot, where there was a space for 120, and we looked at it. We're like, oh, this is very big. So easier said, when you get given a number, it depends on the whole idea of how you want to design your practice, right? Could be big, could be the right size for some people. So you need to be there. You need to see in person, the flesh, to know whether it's the right one for you. Our place that we have now is actually 60 square meters. That's why we
Right.
thought, no, this would not be a good fit. Like,
Okay.
did not consider it at the beginning. But so when we thought, this is a good location, there's nowhere else where, you will have Walleye Creek to rent. That's not overly big, that's not oversized. So we went, okay, let's look at this place. And we looked at it. It was an empty shell. And we thought, okay, we can make this work. And then at the time we thought, okay, well, I went to look at it first. And then Mandy and myself went to look at it. And at the stage, my partner, so my now husband's dad, he worked in construction. And he thought, why don't I come and have a look at it? So he went to look at it and he thought, yeah, I think you can work with this. It's a little bit small, but I think it will be fine. So we thought, okay, well, this will be the spot now. Now we got to negotiate.
Yeah.
We reached out and they were asking for X amount at the time. So we thought, okay, X amount for this size land, I don't think this is a good deal. So we thought, but we don't have any negotiating experience. We're both optometrists. We've never been taught how to do business negotiating real estate. So at the time, Provision said, look, I think this is a fair amount. This is how much you can negotiate it down by. For commercial leases, it does go up every year. I think this percentage is good. So I was like, okay, well, I talked to Mandy and we thought, no, we want to go lower. We want to go for something that, works better for us.
Yep.
So I called the real estate agent. I'm like, look, we're interested in this location. And he went, oh, yeah, it's available. And I'm like, okay, great. He's like, what are your thoughts? I'm like, well, we're thinking X minus 10. And he thought, no, that's too low. They're not going to entertain it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. And the real estate agent said, well, I think you should go for X plus 5 because we actually have other people wanting this area. I'm like, you know what? If there's other people interested in this area, I'm going to wait it out. I'll see how they respond to it. And then you let me know if it's available again. And he thought, oh, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And with the call, conversed with Mandy and like, do you really want this location? I'm like, yes, I really want this location. So we're like, okay, well, we'll go for it anyway. He sent across, this application that we have to fill in to express our interest, how much we're willing to pay. I just wrote down the amount that I told him originally. I didn't do this. 5, I did X minus 10. At the time, our coach from Provision said, maybe you should go a little bit closer. I'm like, no, you know what? I'm going to put in this amount. So I put in that amount. I put in a CPI I think I was comfortable with. Went back to them. It was back and forth negotiation. So first they said, okay, we'll meet you halfway, but we only want a 2-year lease. I'm like, no, I don't want a 2-year lease. An optometry practice, you want a 10-year lease. At that time, I was also locuming around different practices, and I was given the tip that, maybe it's all good to lock yourself in 10 years. You want the option.
Yeah, I was going to say, what made you think 10 years?
Yeah, well, I just thought 10 years is a good amount of time. We were 24 at the time, so, what do we know? So one of the business owners told me when I was locuming, well, 10 years is a good amount, but what happens if it doesn't work? I'm like, oh, that's true, right? Yeah, so you want options. I'm like, options? Yeah, options. So when you hit the end of an option, you can just leave. I'm like, oh, we can do that? Like, yes. So she goes, ask for 3 plus 3 plus 3. And I'm like, all right. So I put in 3 plus 3 plus 4. And they went back with, no, we'll give you 2 plus 2. But we'll lower the rent to the number you wanted. So we'll give you X minus 10. And I thought, no, that's not what I want. We've invested so much. We're not going to open for 4 years. I want to be open for longer. And independent practices, optometry practice, you don't open for a short amount of time if you want to be successful. So I went back, I'm like, 3 plus 3 plus 3 again. And they went, okay, well, if you want your 3 plus 3 plus 3, we need to increase the CPI a little bit. Like, okay, let's do that. And then it was a lot of bad cop, good cop coming into play. A lot of back and forth, but eventually we got there. We got our lease, we got our location, and then the application form came back and said, okay, you just need to sign this, get your conveyancer to look through. I'm like, oh. So we started thinking, like, now we need a conveyancer. Yeah. At the time we asked, I don't recall how we got our conveyancer, but we were recommended a conveyancer, either through Strata, either through the development company at the time, or either Provision. Got our conveyancer. Then when they had to look through it. Everything was good. We signed it, and that's how we found the location that we're at now. Cool.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to what a negotiation looks like. And as an optometrist graduating uni, you never think you're going to be, involved in a communication like that. But I can only get a lot of confidence out of it. And I guess looking back on it, you probably learn a lot. And if you ever had to do it again, you'd be much better suited for it. You found the location, and again, you went through the negotiation process. The practice design, right? That would have come next. And what did that look like? And was that something that you did yourself, or did you hire an agency to design it for you? And how did you understand? How did you understand and take on that project?
So originally, when we found the location, we've locked it in. My husband's partner at the time, his dad said, okay, you guys need a designer, you need a shop fitter. I have someone in industry that I may be able to connect you guys with. So he connected us with the designer, and he connected us with the shop fitter, and they came in together. And at the time when they looked at it, they said, oh, this is easy. And I'm like, okay, well, it's easy. That's good to hear. And he said, it will only cost you X amount. And I'm like, okay, are you sure it will only cost us X amount? Because the amount that he listed was quite low. Are you sure it will only cost us X amount? I'm happy to go higher as long as the design works. And he said, no, you'll be fine. So they did all the measurements. So that's how we have all the dimensions for the practice itself. And they went back and they asked, like, what do we want to do? So what I did was, I'm a little bit more on the design aspect of the business. So I went on my PowerPoint. I had the design held up, and I went, okay, how do I fit 2 consultation rooms and an imaging room in here? So I started drawing circles. I started drawing squares, lines, just to separate, and how I want the practice to actually be laid out first. After that,
but you're using your own initiative in this instance. So this is all based on, I guess, your experience.
Yeah, just my experiences of working in practice, just my experience of how to jigsaw everything in a small space, just to make it work. And then I sent it to the designer, like, this is how I want the practice clinic room, and this is where I want the imaging room. You can design what it looks like inside, and you can design what it looks like outside. And then being a designer who doesn't work in the health industry, because we went for someone that doesn't normally do optometry design.
Yeah.
I had to know the design aspects, the the length and the measurements of everything. I'm like, okay, well, Shannon's stand is this big. This is how long the clinic room needs to be.
Yes.
Hence, this is all the measurements, make it work. And then they came back with a design, looks very good, and we agreed on it. There were small changes on the side, like, no, this is the orientation of the chair, it won't work the other way, or else the patient will be facing the wall, or so forth.
Yes.
We ironed those little itty-bitties out. And the next process was, okay, you have your design, send it to the shop fitter, and they will give you your final quote. To our surprise, I was locuming at the time, so I was just working, and then I saw a notification pop up, and afterwards I realized the quote went through was 2.5 times what was estimated.
Wow.
And that was a shock for us because, you've gotten your pre-approved from the bank.
Yeah.
You can't go back to the bank and say, okay, I need 2.5 times that amount to borrow to do the shop fit out. So at the stage, Mandy and myself were like, oh, what are we going to do now? I was not too panicked because I know that because my partner's dad is in the industry, if anything, he will help out. And he did offer to help. I was like, look, I feel bad that this happened.
Yeah.
Let me help do your fit out. I'll project manage this fit out.
Okay.
So he did that. He helped us project manage the fit out. He got contractors on the side to help fit out the practice as well. And when you design a practice, which I realized later on is the design may look amazing, but during fit out, there'll be things that won't work. So I'll get calls at 10 p.m. saying, look,
Yeah.
this doesn't work. There's
No.
no space to walk. So I'll come in, I'll look at the clinic, I'll squat on the floor and I'll start like drawing stuff and mapping things out of how to move things, how to change the design to make sure things work okay, altering the heights of the stand because originally you can't reach the top two shelves of the glasses. So having someone that do the fit out as well is really good because people
A lot of variations.
Yeah. Whereas if someone, they're like, this doesn't look right, and they just message you, they ask you, oh, is this okay? So then you redesign it, you fix it up, you fine tune your fit out, and then you have your practice.
And so I guess it's fair to say that it wasn't what it initially started out to be from a design point of view, both from a design and a budget point of view. And you had to have the ability to navigate that. I would imagine that that's generally the case for most people. It's not, I wouldn't say it's unique for just you. It's probably one of those things going into it, you might do a little bit differently. But I guess, and then obviously you've opened up the business. So if you review, and we just went through a whole heap of things really quickly, like you said, it doesn't happen in that order and in that way. There would have been things that happened all over the shop and it would have felt like complete mayhem and maybe a process that might never end. But when you're looking back at it in reflection, other than the quote, obviously, that you said was 2.5 times higher, that obviously got you off guard. Was there anything else that got you off guard during that process or, in reflection from right to the beginning through to finishing the shop fit out? What was the thing that did catch you off guard the most? Looking back at it, what was it like? Oh, wow. Now that I look back at that was difficult. That was challenging. That really wasn't what I was expecting.
I think in hindsight, you can go, oh, I can do this so much better. But in the moment, what then is probably the best that you can action a certain situation or a certain challenge. I guess one thing that we wouldn't have any control on is the actual design of fit out because you might go, okay, I have a process running. I want to just race to the finish line and open my practice, but that's not how it works. Construction, fit out, there's delays, there's processes, there's admins, you need contract counsel, strata, get approval.
Yep.
There's a lot of back and forth in the situation.
Yeah, we haven't even spoken about council requirements or anything like that and what that looked like, so.
Exactly. So, and you don't know until someone tells you that I can't go ahead with this design unless you get strata to approve this. I can't go ahead with fit out unless you get the fire department to do the fire checks. You need a fire practitioner. So that all sounds very obvious to us now, but for someone who's 2 years out of university,
I mean, you're an optometrist. You're a clinical professional. Ultimately, you're a healthcare aide. So to go through all of this, it's which is why the feat can't be underestimated. It is an epic achievement, and the tenaciousness of your personality, obviously, and the ability to get things done. I think one thing I've learned along the way is saying done is better than perfect. And, you probably would have had so many instances there where you're like, that'll get a job done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But
And I believe my mindset is more, if you come to a stump or a problem, you
mhm,
don't dwell on the problem. You look at, okay, well, you can dwell, but you go,
mm,
okay, this is the problem.
yeah,
How do I solve it? What's
what's
the
the solution?
solution? Or how can
Exactly.
I get to the solution?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's better than not doing anything.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think that's a really good mind. And a lot of this is mindset stuff. And we don't really talk about mindset specifically, but we're speaking more about the actual mechanics of what you've done. But obviously there is an underlying mindset behind all of this, which is probably motivating you and inspiring you. And some of it we've touched on, but there's some things that we won't. But what do you think was the most underestimated part about setting your practice? And I guess for the purpose of setting up the practice, if you were to look in reflection, and I understand that in the moment you only know what you know. So obviously you do things as best you know. But now that you know what you know, let's say we could take Sheila back from today and go back to that beginning part. What's one thing that you might do differently, or what's one thing perhaps that you overestimated, and what would you find, Sheila? What would you, I guess, especially for the listeners, point out as something to be really mindful of at that stage?
The thing is, something that I would want to know back then, I can't pinpoint the exact tip that I would want to give myself, just
Mhm.
because I feel like if I didn't go through those challenges at that
Sure.
certain time, I would have not had the learnings that I actually got from it.
Yeah.
And I might not be able to be the person that I am today. So I
Mhm.
do value all the hardship and all the
Yeah,
obstacles that I did go through. And I
for
feel like
sure.
another person will also value that as well.
Yeah.
Um, However, some things that might be valuable for people would be, when you're designing your practice, try to make it as ergonomic as possible.
Yeah.
For example, my chair, I can't move it past this point without hitting my cupboard. So maybe just give yourself more space.
Yeah.
Um, I guess that's the lighter side of things. But look, it's more so, if I was to look back on a non-admin or business mindset, it's more, don't get bogged down by small things that happen. Just take it as a learning point and
For sure.
grow from it. Because if you think about something that goes wrong or something that doesn't go the way you want it to be, you can very much spiral and things can end up very differently. Whereas
Mm.
if you have a positive mindset, if you're able to communicate things through, if you think of a solution to what obstacles you have, then the outcome will be a lot better than you would expect it to. But they're
Yeah.
all learning experiences that you will go through when you get to
Oh,
that
for
point.
sure. I mean, one thing that stood out for me when you were chatting and going through that process, and it goes back to the 2.5's time, with regards to the shop design, it's maybe as part of that business plan, it would be like, okay, let's actually, maybe pay a consultant of some sort, whether it's, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, assuming that's what it is. It could be, a lot more. So actually give me a bit of a rough flow as to what a 60 or 70 or 80 square meter practice might look like, and then
Mhm.
get a quote on that. And that way you sort of incorporate that into your business plan too, with regards to, because that's a really, when you look at, I guess, expenditure items in a setup, in a practice, one of your biggest ones are going before you open the doors that you have to spend is a fit out. And so I feel like, that's something that you're probably going to want some clarity on at the early stages, because, and that's generally just a starting point. And I'm sure even what it ended up being compared to what you probably thought it was is a little bit different too. But there are little things like that. I feel like and that's something that I was sort of drawn to as you were talking there.
Oh, the strange thing about that was we did get someone to
Oh,
predict
you
how much
did?
the fit out. Yeah, we
Right.
did get someone to predict how much the fit out would be. That was
Yeah.
why, and the designer and the fit out as they came together. So even
Right.
though we paid them separately, we already discussed, look, we want a boutique optometrist. This is the design we're after. This is how much we have been pre-approved for the
Mm,
fit out. Please
mm,
let us know if you need more, because this
mm,
value, we're going off a guide.
mm,
So anything more, let us
mm.
know and we always
Yeah.
approach them.
Mm.
So they reassured us. They said, no, look,
Right.
don't worry,
Yeah.
it will be like this. So
Mm.
we tried to do our due diligence.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it was also at a time where you're moving out of COVID. So it
for
was
sure.
quite difficult to grasp
Well,
how
and prices
much
went up
that would
massively,
be.
especially in the building context
Yes.
after COVID, and they continue to. So,
Yeah.
so I guess there's that aspect too.
So at the time, they didn't have enough resources. I think
Mm,
fit out
mm,
costs at
mm,
the
mm.
time increased by 40% compared to normal.
Yeah,
So that
yeah.
that we were quoted by a consultant before we began the process
Mm,
was very different. Two
mm.
months, 3 months down the
So there
track.
you go. So even in that due diligence, obviously, you're not going to be able to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and there is that learning experience. And I think it's always that buffer amount. I think you always got to have that buffer amount. And now, whenever you're building something, you've always it's either it's a contingency, whether it's a 5 or a 10 or a 15%. I
Mm.
think little things like that, because there are going to be those expenses that will just creep up, and it's one of those things to keep in mind. All right, so we've got the store, and congratulations on it, by the way. I mean, like that like I said, that journey is epic, and I don't want anyone to underestimate how difficult that must have all been. So getting through all of that and opening the front door in its own right, ready for business, that must have been such an amazing moment for you. And I guess if you go back to that time, what were the first few months? What were they like after opening?
So the first couple months after opening, we both agreed to be in the practice 7 days a week, just to learn how we actually work as clinicians. With your friends, we've designed the business together, we've done the fit out together, but we haven't worked together as optometrists. So that was our first 3 months, making sure that we understand how the other person works. And from that, come up with a good flow for the clinic itself. Once you develop the flow for the clinic that will work well for both of us, then we thought, okay, let's have a look at building rapport with people in the local community. So we approached GPs, pharmacies, allied health, let them know that we're in the area, the services that we provide, and we went from there. Now, it was very good because in my area of interest, which is orthokeratology and advanced contact lenses, I would like to have kid patients, teenage adults, sometimes young professionals who want to have more freedom from glasses. And for Mandy, they had an interest in children's visions and behavioral. So then they will approach other allied health practitioners that I would have not thought to think
Mm,
to them.
mm,
And with that, we actually built a very good relationship with people in the community.
nice.
And over time, at the 3 month mark, we thought, okay, I think we've done it. We've set out our lens prices. We've talked to our suppliers. We have our frames. We know what we want. We know what to dispense to patient when they come in. And this works well for us. I think it's time that we don't work 7 days a week anymore.
Mm,
So
mm,
we interview staff. We thought, okay, staff, do we want full-time staff? Do we want part-time staff? We know that one of us will always be in the practice. So let's go for part-time staff. Interview people, candidates, hire them, did the training process together, walk them through what our journey is when someone comes in to do an eye test. And slowly, once they're trained up, so we opened in March 2023. By June 2023, we started working 6 days a week and then 5 days a week. And then now we both spend 4 days a week in clinic each. And that's very valuable because now we have the extra 2 days. And the first 3 months was difficult because when you open an independent practice, you don't pay yourself in the first year or two even. When you sign on as a director for a corporate practice, you're safe. You have a base. You have the
yeah.
bonus. You earn money right away. So for us, we went, okay, so we put in so much money in the business. We've worked for 3 months without paying ourselves. Now we're 4 days in the business. We can subcontract. We can work for other clinics. We can earn money on the side to help with cash flow for the business. So we were effectively still working 6 to 7 days a week at that stage, but
Right.
things were easier. Things were looking up. And now slowly it's gotten to the stage where we are now, where we no longer need to do the 7-day work. We can be in the practice 4 days a week. We can either work if we want in our spare time or pursue our interests, have a rest, or just figure out ways to develop and grow the business in our spare time
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, you speak to a really powerful point about why independent optometry is a path potentially, and that you mentioned it from the top, but it is that work, that lifestyle balance. that you can work towards. You don't necessarily have it from the beginning, but if
Definitely not.
it's and nothing generally comes at the beginning, and it's a plan, and there's a strategy behind it, and I think one thing that independent optometry provides is that opportunity to have a lifestyle related business where you can be a business owner and you can then manage that accordingly. And what that looks like is really up to the person that runs the business and owns the business, and they can, you give them that maximum freedom, but you've got to work towards it. And I think it's something that you've always been mindful of, and so that really shows the power of it. So you mentioned staff. I mean, obviously that becomes another really big area when your business evolves. Obviously, you got yourself, Mandy, your partners. You're just using it's your time. But once you bring staff on, then there's a whole other, I guess, complexity that's brought into the business. That's a stage that you've been through. You've taken on staff?
We was taken on staff, that's correct.
And how has that been? And can you speak to that? Like, how did that change the workload for yourselves? And also, what's that been like as an experience as a business owner?
So bringing on staff for us was quite good, because now we're no longer being the clinician as well as dispenser and the admin person. We now have people where we can delegate the roles of responsibility to, but we understand that our staff will only be as good as how much time we invest in them. So we make sure that we give them training, give them steps in order for them to succeed, and ensure that they give us feedback. So for myself, even though I am an employer, I know how it feels like to be an employee. So I want to make sure that I make work as comfortable as possible for my staff. I'll ask them, how is training? Do you think this helps? Is there another way that I can do this to help you grow better? And as well, when your staff is doing a good job, positive reinforcement is very important, because you want to make sure they know that they're doing something correctly. And being able to fix the mistakes at the very beginning is very important as well. So instead of just hiring the staff and feeling like, okay, well, I have a staff now, they do everything, you need to make sure you're also there to be their support system. Unlike being a big corporation where you have HR, you are HR. And I guess it works well for them too, because if anything, they can just approach you about situations and you solve it together.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, like you said, being in a corporation or being in a corporate and how staff are managed there, and how independent does it, obviously, is one of those examples of positives and negatives. Each have their own challenges, and I think obviously being smaller in nature, obviously being HR, person, being the culture person and setting that all up is something that you probably don't think about initially. You come to learn it as you go through the motions, and I can imagine that's been quite an experience from taking on your first staff member, and maybe you still have them, but that continuum of what that looks like now, and dealing with all those, again, training and retention and things like that. So it's another aspect of business that you don't normally get trained on as an optometry student. When you look at, I guess, a typical first week when you started to a typical week now, what's the difference? What do they look like?
So if I was to compare when we first opened, not talking about the first month of practice, because that's when you have your friends and your family wanting to come to support you. When we were a little bit more settled in the second and third month, I would say there are days where you have 5 patients or 3 patients, and that's great. Look, when you're talking about it, 3 to 5 sounds like a very quiet day. But realistically, when you first open, that's not bad. That's actually quite good. There are days where you get 0 as well, and that's when you would think, oh, something's wrong. But at the beginning, no one knows who you are. You're new to the community. So even though there are days where we had 0 patients or just 3 patients, we knew, okay, this is when we can improve the business. We have time.
Yes.
You won't have time in the future to do all of these things. So now that you have time to sit down, what can we do to improve the business in the meantime? And that's what we did. Comparing it to now, we'll have around 3 to 10 patients a day, sometimes more, because there's days that you're going to be very busy. There's days where you might have 3 or 4 patients. But ultimately, I think at this 2.5-year mark, that's a good one.
Absolutely. What were some of those initial activities that you would do? So, you said, as you opened up, you had those quieter periods that enabled you then to focus on the business. What were the main, I guess, needle movers with regards to, the activities that you did at those moments that you really saw as a benefit to the business?
So some things that we knew worked well was spending that time to visit GPs,
Yeah.
have lunch with them, talk to them, tell them what we offer in the clinic, talking to allied health practitioners. They're a very good starting point because GP sees a lot of patients every day. And
Yeah.
knowing that there's an optometrist there that's willing to see patients with eye problems or patients that
Yes.
have diabetes, that's so easy for them. They go, look, I know an optometrist down the road, go there, have a look first. So when we first opened and we were quiet, once we visited the GP and pharmacy, I'll be closing the door at 6 p.m. and then someone will walk in with a red eye. So I was like,
Right.
oh, is everything okay? They're like, the pharmacy told me to come here. So we thought, okay, we'll open back up. We'll see you. So
Mm.
there's more things you can do when you're first opening that you have
Yeah.
time for that you won't have time for the future. Other things that we did was, okay, well, we have time. Let's improve the website. I've heard of this thing called SEO. Let's do SEO together. Let's improve Google searches and make sure we have more leads to the practice. Have little flyers. You go out, you talk to people, you give them cookies, you converse with them, introduce yourself as optometrist, and then they would know you more as a person and they're more
Mm.
likely to visit you. So those are all the things that we did when we first opened that we don't do as much anymore. We also did school screenings. So
Okay.
that's another way to open up your connections in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Cool. As we start to wrap it up today, and I want to thank you for the conversation and how open you've been with regards to your experience. I really think we've spoken about a lot of things, and it's really insightful. And I feel like, especially for the young optom out there or the young even business owner that's looking at this, I think there's so many tips and pieces of advice that they're going to get throughout this conversation. But as we start to wrap it up, what personality traits or habits do you think that have helped you the most as a business owner? And I guess in the experience that you've been through and explained to us today?
I think personality traits that would help out being a business owner would be motivation, being very motivated, making sure you're always striving to improve, be better than you are compared to how you are now. Logical. So making sure you're not just thinking on your emotions, ensuring that you can take a step back from the situation and look at everything as a whole, and then evaluate the situation and come up with solutions. The last thing, and I feel like that's the most important, is communication. You be the best person to open the business, but if you can't communicate, if you can't emphasize and think about the situation from the other person's point of view, sometimes it will make partnership, it will make opening a business very difficult. So those three things are very valuable in
Yeah.
terms of opening a practice.
And what advice would you give to a young optometrist who's unsure if they're ready? They listen to this and
Well,
they're going, "Oh no, this is not for them." But but they still are with their ambition. What are you going to be saying to them?
I think the thing is, you're never going to be ready to open your own practice because it's something outside of your comfort zone. You have
Mm.
to learn as you go. But what I thought when I wanted to pursue this pathway was I wanted to put the bet on myself rather than betting my future on my employer. I feel like I am capable of achieving a lot and putting all that effort, all that energy, all that years into myself and my future. I just trust that. And I feel like being able to believe in yourself and put that investment in yourself as a person would be the first step to succeeding in opening your own practice.
Yeah, like that's very, very inspiring and very empowering too. Betting on yourself, I think, is a really good concept there, and I feel like it. It's that we have a very unique industry where you have the ability to be a business owner in your practice area and run it quite well in the way that you want to, and it really is opening up a lot of opportunities now. And so I feel like there is so much scope there for development, for creating a business, and so I think that I totally resonate with what you're saying. What keeps you motivated and inspired at this stage? I mean, obviously lots of things happening for yourself. And you spoke about motivation being a really important thing. How do you stay motivated? What keeps you inspired at this particular point?
For me as a person, I always want to learn and grow and be better than the person I am yesterday or today.
Mm.
So having this opportunity to open a practice, call it my own, knowing that whatever I put in the practice and whatever comes out of the practice is going to be very rewarding because it's a direct impact of the changes that I've made, is enough for me to keep going. And being able to have that time to develop as an eye care practitioner in advanced contact lenses, pretty much it's a double-edged sword. If you don't succeed, if you don't make money, you don't get anything. But if you succeed and you do well, the sky's the limit. There's nothing stopping you from growing. Whereas if you're in a corporate practice, there will be steps, there's procedures that you have to follow. But when you open your own practice, yes, there's procedures, but
Yeah.
ultimately you make the shots.
It's
You
a
bet on
risk
your
reward. It's a
you
risk
put
reward.
the-
You got to
exactly.
risk a lot early on, and obviously you're testament to that. But the rewards that you can reap are numerous in nature, and I guess and that goes back to whether you decide to take it on as a partner or independent as your own. I mean, if you take it on your own, you are just you're increasing the risk, but you're also potentially reaping more of a reward, and it's all going to be yours. Like depending on how you want to think about it, but all of it is about that. And so I feel like as an independent business owner, it is that risk reward balance and understand, or double-edged sword as you've described it. And I think understanding that, it also motivates you then to be successful too. And I think this is where we live in we have a really unique industry where success leaves clues. And, something that you mentioned early on, whether it was speaking to Wilson or to reaching and getting advice from particular people, you don't have to, reinvent the wheel. There's actually, it's done, it's out there. It's about going out and seeking and asking and finding out what it takes for it to be done. There's so much opportunity there. And I feel like as an independent, you have the ability to do that. And we haven't really spoken about the fact that you've been able to take on a role with Mandy, but it points to the fact that you are really in control of your destiny and you're creating the environment that you want for yourself. And I think that's a really empowering message for students or for optoms, young optoms that are looking at this particular path and then partnering with people, that are like-minded. I think, there are so many elements when I hear you speak that are just so intertwined, and you can use it in so many contexts, but the fundamental nature of it is the same. And so, I think it's awesome from that point of view. Where do you see the business going in the next few years? What's the radar look like?
It's hard to say because our original business plan when we opened, or before we opened, when we decided to open was, let's open one first and then 5 in 5 years. And I think at this stage, we're revisiting the idea and we thought, why don't we just
Lifestyle,
take
right?
time? Yeah. Look, things might be different 6 months down the track, 12 months down the track. I think at this stage, we're thinking there's always room to grow the business. Let's make sure we grow the business, but we also grow ourselves as individuals, as practitioners, as clinicians. So that's why I look back to the point where I get to advance myself in advanced contact lenses and ortho at the moment with my role and also my private studies. And Mandy at the same time is also able to go on and do courses from ACPO and advance themselves in behavioral optometry. So previously we just went on conference overseas and Mandy went to a conference interstate just to make sure that we're bringing the best learning, up-to-date learning for the clinic, for the patient. So I feel like over time you learn to adapt and change your business plan, whether you want to expand very quickly or you want to expand slowly and grow as a clinician. That it's never solid. You're always going to change. Everything's dynamic. The industry is dynamic.
The ball's in your court, and that's the beauty of independence.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Sheila. I really appreciate all your time and your insights today. I think, like I said, we've spoken about a whole heap of things, and I really feel like there's a lot of insights there to be had. So thank you so much for sharing. Before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up or if they have any questions?
I'm happy for everyone to reach out to me on social media or via email, which I can provide to you. And if they reach out to you,
we'll put a link in the show notes to your email and to other details with regards to your social, so people can reach out, whether it's LinkedIn or maybe Instagram or the like. So people, if they do have questions, they can reach out to you. But thank you so much, Sheila, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ansel. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to The Focused View. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe on your preferred podcast app, and share it with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals across Australia. For additional resources and downloads, visit thefocusedview.com.au. I'm Michael Nasser. Until next time, keep focused.